The morning they let Daniel Reeves go, it was raining. Not a dramatic rain, not the kind that rattles windows and bends trees sideways. Just a quiet, steady drizzle that settled over the parking lot of Callaway Motorsport like a gray blanket, softening the edges of everything. Daniel sat in his truck for a few minutes after walking out of the building. He didn't start the engine right away. He just watched the rain trace slow lines down the windshield and let the quiet sit with him. He had worked at Callaway Motorsport for 11 years. 11 years is a long time. Long enough to learn every corner of a place. Long enough to know which hallway lights flicker on cold mornings, which supply room door sticks in humid weather, which coffee machine on the second floor pours too hot and which one pours too cold. Long enough, Daniel had believed, to matter. He supposed he had been wrong about that last part. Daniel Reeves was 41 years old. He lived in a modest house on the east side of town with his daughter, Lily, who was 9 and had her mother's eyes and his stubborn streak. He had raised her mostly alone since she was 4, and he had built his entire life around two things, her, and the work. The work was everything to him. He had started at Callaway as a junior fabricator, fresh out of a vocational program, young and a little rough around the edges and burning with a kind of quiet ambition that doesn't announce itself loudly but never really goes away. Over the years, he had worked his way into the fabrication bay, the heart of the facility, where the race cars were actually made. Not assembled from kits or modified from stock bodies, but built. Welded and shaped and tuned from raw materials into machines that could do 180 miles per hour and hold together under forces that would tear apart lesser work. Daniel had built most of them. Not in the way that gets a credit or a nameplate. Not in the way anyone mentions at press events or quarterly reviews. He built them the way all essential things get built, quietly, carefully, by someone who understands the work better than anyone else in the room and doesn't feel the need to say so. The engine that had gotten him fired was the engine in car 11. It had started 3 days before the season's biggest qualifying race. The lead mechanic on car 11, a newer hire named Preston, who wore his confidence loudly and his experience lightly, had signed off on a full systems check. But Daniel had noticed something during a routine walkthrough. A subtle misalignment in the crankshaft assembly. Small enough to miss if you were moving quickly. Significant enough to matter at race speed, where small things have large consequences. He had flagged it through the proper channel. The report sat unacknowledged for 2 days. The morning before qualifying, Daniel had come in early, before the rest of the crew arrived, and fixed it himself. He hadn't done it to undermine anyone. He hadn't done it to make a point. He had done it because he understood exactly what that misalignment would mean at full throttle, on a bank turn, with everything on the line. He had done it because walking away from a problem he could fix was simply not something he knew how to do. Richard Callaway had found out by mid-morning. The meeting was short. Callaway was a man who made decisions the way some people tear off bandages, quickly, with minimal ceremony. Daniel had bypassed protocol, had interfered with another team member's vehicle without authorization. It didn't matter that the fix was correct. It didn't matter that the car was safer for it. What mattered, Callaway said, was the chain of command. Daniel had listened quietly. He hadn't argued. He had nodded once and shaken the man's hand and walked out into the drizzle. He spent the first week at home. Lily was at school during the days, and the house was very quiet. Daniel moved through it slowly, drinking coffee at the kitchen table, watching the backyard through the window. A neighbor's cat came and sat on the fence post every morning, orange and unbothered, and Daniel found he appreciated the company. He fixed things around the house that he had been meaning to fix for months. A squeaking stair, a kitchen drawer that had never quite closed properly, a section of fence in the backyard where the post had shifted in last winter's frost. He worked with the same steady attention he brought to everything, and when each thing was done, he stood back and looked at it for a moment before moving to the next. On the 8th day, his phone rang. The number was from a racing operation he recognized, Whitfield Performance, a smaller team that had been competing in the regional circuit for several seasons. He had crossed paths with their crew chief, a woman named Gloria, at various events over the years. She was direct and experienced and ran a tight program with not quite enough resources. She had heard, she said, that he was available. She had also heard, and here her voice shifted into something quieter, more careful, that he was the one who had actually built most of Callaway's winning cars over the past decade. Not just fabricated parts, designed solutions, solved problems that no one else had been able to crack. She asked if that was true. Daniel thought about it for a moment. More or less, he said. Gloria was quiet for a beat. Then she said, "Come work with us. We can't match what Callaway paid you. Not yet, but we're building something real, and I'd rather build it with someone who knows what they're doing." He drove out to their facility the next morning. Whitfield Performance operated out of a converted warehouse on the edge of an industrial park. It was modest by the standards of where Daniel had come from: less equipment, fewer staff, thinner margins. But the space was clean and orderly, and the people in it moved with a kind of purposeful calm that he recognized immediately. These were people who cared about the work. He took the job. Over the following months, Daniel brought everything he had, every technique refined over 11 years, every solution developed through long nights and failed attempts, and the kind of patient problem solving that can't be taught quickly. He rebuilt their fabrication process from the ground up. He redesigned 2 chassis components that had been limiting their car's performance in ways the team had accepted as simply the cost of competing at a lower budget level. They weren't limitations. They were solvable problems. Car by car, the times improved. By the end of the season's first half, Whitfield Performance had won 3 regional events and qualified for the national series. Racing publications started running small items about the team's unexpected surge. None of them mentioned Daniel by name. He was never in the photographs, never at the press tables, but the people inside the sport began to notice. One afternoon, he got a text from a number he didn't immediately recognize. "Heard you're doing good work over at Whitfield. Wanted to say, I was wrong about the way things ended. R. Callaway." Daniel read it twice. He set the phone down on his workbench and picked up a wrench and went back to work. Later, walking to his truck at the end of the day, he thought about what he might say in reply. He thought about Lily, who had made him a card when he lost his job that said, "You always fix things, Dad," in careful, looping handwriting, illustrated with a small drawing of a race car. He thought about the orange cat on the fence post. He thought about the quiet satisfaction of a thing done correctly, not for recognition, but because it mattered. He typed back, "Thank you, Richard. I appreciate that." Then he drove home. Lily was at the kitchen table doing homework when he came in, and she looked up and smiled, and the house was warm and full of the smell of something she had attempted to cook, and Daniel Reeves stood in the doorway for a moment and let it all settle around him like something he had built himself. Which, of course, he had. Word count: approximately 1,280 words.